there, welcome to the 20th video in learning everything we can learn from VisionOS Documentation that's made by Apple. Here we're looking at the trimming and exporting media in VisionOS article, which will learn how to display standard controls in your app to edit the timeline of the currently playing media. You'll use the AV Player View Controller to present the system video player interface in your VisionOS app. In addition to this primary role, AV Player View Controller can also provide a media trimming experience similar to the interface of QuickTime Player in macOS, like that of below. When you've enabled this feature, people can specify a segment of your media timeline for display. This article describes how to adopt this feature in your app and show how to use AV Foundations to export the trimmed results. Here is QuickTime Player. This is a video. And here we see that we can trim. Let's determine whether the media supports trimming. Apps typically provide a user interface element to put the player view controller into trimming mode. Because the player doesn't support trimming certain media, such as HTTP live streaming or protected content, apps observe the state of that can be trimmed property to update the enabled state of their user interface accordingly. For example, the following code observes the state of can begin trimming property and updates the state of a published property, which sets the appropriate enabled state in the UI. Here we have a few published properties. Is trimming and supports trimming is set to be true. Here we generate a controller, AV Player View Controller, and make sure that we have a controller. This line of code resets this internal states variables to false and exits if there's no controller. Now, suppose we do have a controller, and we'll connect the controller's player to be our player, and we'll update the state of supports trimming based on the value of can begin trimming. So our controller publishes can be trimming, and we'll remove any duplicates of that publisher, and we'll assign it to the supports trimming, the in-out, and is by reference published property. Enable the trimming user interface. After you determine that the player view controller supports editing the current media timeline, call the player begin trimming completion handler method to enable its trimming interface. Call this method from an asynchronous context. Here we have a function called system trimming async. Let's grab that controller and grab that information whether it can be begin trimming or not. If it can be trimming, let's set is trimming to be true, and let's turn that controller begin trimming function on. This happens if a user pinch the button to complete the trimming operation, is what happens at the beginning at this particular completion handler, and we have else statement, a user pinched the button to cancel their change. And once that happens, we'll set is trimming to be false. This method returns a Boolean value that indicates whether the user pinched the done button or the cancel button. Pinching done button causes the view controller to update the view values of the player's items, reverse playback end time, and forward playback end time property to match the trim section. Now, export the trimmed media sections. A convenient way to export your trim section is to use the AV Asset Export session. This object provides a simple preset-based approach to transcode media in various formats. Creates an instance of an export session by passing it the player items asset and an export preset. Additionally, configure its output URL and file type. Export the asset in its highest quality by setting a preset to this particular object, AV Asset Export Preset highest quality. Next, check the compatibility of the preset to export the video to the output file type. Gartlet AV Asset Export Session compatibility with the presets and player item.assets and the output file type of .mp4. Else, the selected preset can't export the video to the output file type. Once that is done, we do a Gartlet for export session, where AV export session is the player item assets, the video, and our presets. Else, we are unable to create an export session that supports the assets and preset return. To export only the portion of the asset that matches your trim session creates a CM time range based on the reverse and forward playback end times of the current player item. Here we have the start time, and we have a player item dot reverse playback end time, and we have the end time with player forward playback end time. With those sections, you do an export session of the time range of the CM time range between the start time and the end time. Finally, begin the export operation to begin asynchronous transcoding the media to the output URL await export session.export. And with that, we can export trimmed media for VisionOS.